Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're immersing ourselves in Sikhism, its principles, its history, and its really incredible global journey.
It's a fascinating faith.
It really is. It started less than 5 centuries ago, in this tumultuous period in 15th century South Asia, and now it's one of the world's major religions, with over 20 million adherents.
And it's such an essential deep dive for you because Sikhism gives us this amazing case study in how a faith can maintain a really radical, uncompromising identity.
Both spiritually and, maybe more importantly, visibly.
Exactly. While at the same time successfully integrating into these complex modern societies like here in Canada or in the United States.
So that's our mission today, really, to understand that balance. We want to extract the foundational principles, devotion, worship, work, charity, and then trace the arc of the community's history.
With a real focus on the resilience we see in the source material you shared, especially, like you said, their integration into North America.
Okay, so to get this story, we have to start with the environment, right? Where it all began.
We do. It was founded in the Punjab region. You have to picture this historic crossroads, constantly contested, bridging what is now northwestern India and Pakistan.
Yeah.
It was a place where Hinduism and Islam met.
And often clashed.
Debated, clashed, coexisted. It was a real melting pot of ideas.
But what's so crucial, and what the sources really hammer home, is that Sikhism didn't just borrow from its neighbors. It synthesized and it challenged them. It laid out a totally unique path.
A path centered on this idea of radical universal equality, moving away from the rigid caste systems and all the ritualism that was so common at the time.
So, of course, that path begins with the founder, Guru Nanak, born in 1469.
Right, and the sources describe him as being just deeply unsatisfied with the formal religion he saw around him.
Especially the rituals and that entrenched social hierarchy, the caste system.
Exactly. It seems less like a slow evolution for him and more like a profound spiritual awakening, a sudden realization.
So what was the catalyst for his movement then? What was the spark?
It was this powerful realization of the absolute unity of God, a divine presence that, went beyond any specific ritual or label. And after this experience, he came forward with a declaration that just shattered the existing religious world.
There is neither Hindu nor Muslim, but the path I follow is God's.
That's the one. I mean, can you imagine saying that in that place at that time?
It's a staggering claim. It's not just reform. It's a completely new universal path based on direct experience with the divine.
Precisely. And he didn't just preach it. He traveled widely across South Asia, parts of the Middle East, gathering followers, and he established the first Sikh community, Kartar.
And that community was built around a shared economy, right?
Community farm, yeah, and a place of worship and gathering, the Gurdwara. This practical communal foundation is so essential to understanding the faith's active nature. It's not just about belief, it's about doing.
The leadership then continued through a line of 10 human gurus. They were seen as spiritual guides, these embodiments of humility. But that human lineage came to a revolutionary end in 1708.
And that transition is, I think, one of the most intellectually compelling parts of Sikhism. The 10th guru, Guru Gobind Singh, he establishes the Khalsa, the community of fully committed Sikhs. But then he does something incredible.
He designates the sacred text, the Guru Granth Sahib, as the 11th and final eternal guru.
Yes. And think about why that's such a monumental decision.
Well, it prevents any future corruption, right? No more personality cults, no political dynasties twisting the message.
You've got it. It put all the authority into the scripture itself, a compilation of hymns and teachings from the gurus and other saints. The core beliefs were permanently preserved.
So today, the Guru Granth Sahib is treated as the living physical embodiment of the Guru.
With the absolute highest reverence.
Okay, so if the text is the ultimate authority, what are the core beliefs? We know it's strictly monotheistic, centered on one God, Waheguru.
Which means wonderful Lord.
But how does that monotheism translate into a person's purpose?
It connects directly to the cycle of life. Waheguru is the creator, the sovereign designer. Sikhs believe in reincarnation, and the quality of your soul's next form is dictated by your actions, your karni.
And the goal is mukti, or release.
Release, exactly. Escaping that cycle of rebirth and suffering by merging back with God.
Yeah. Lots of traditions have concepts of reincarnation. What makes the Sikh approach a religion of action?
Because the path to mukti isn't just about meditation or living like a monk. It's active, it's ethical, it demands you engage with the world. The sources point to three core pillars.
An honest life.
An honest life, working hard, they call it kirat karni, the dignity of labor, and then devoting a big part of your income and time to charity, to
Yeah.
seva.
So the entire belief system is designed to pull you out of spiritual isolation and into social responsibility.
Yes. And that leads us right into how this all plays out in community practice.
And that practical radical equality is maybe most powerful in this central community building, the Gurdwara.
The door of the guru. It's the spiritual and social hub. It's where you go for worship, for learning, for just being together.
What's really striking about the worship there is the lack of hierarchy.
The intentional lack of it, yeah. There's no formal priesthood. Everyone participates. Now, men and women often sit separately, which is a nod to modesty, but the theology itself insists on absolute gender equality. Women are encouraged to lead services.
But the most famous and maybe the most socially revolutionary element has to be the langar.
Absolutely. The langar, the communal free kitchen, is the beating heart of Sikh egalitarianism. It's a meal they provide after every single service.
And it's open to every single person who walks through that door.
No matter their faith, their caste, their status, their wealth, it doesn't matter.
And the key part, everyone has to sit together on the floor to eat.
That forced equality is the whole point. You have to think back in the 15th and 16th centuries when social stratification was just the norm, telling the rich and the poor, the high caste and the outcast, to literally share space and food.
It was a revolutionary act.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't just charity. It was institutionalized social justice, designed to break down prejudice right then and there.
This practice connects so directly to the visible markers of identity, the Khalsa. This was the moment the faith really shifted from being about just spiritual contemplation to one that required physical commitment and defense.
Yes. Guru Gobind Singh established the Khalsa, the Pure Ones, in 1699. This was about institutionalizing identity and protection. The sources are clear that those who commit fully to the faith wear the 5Ks.
These are the visible symbols.
A series of visible symbols that are both a kind of uniform and a constant personal reminder of their commitment.
We should probably spend a moment on these 5Ks
Yeah.
because they become so central to the Sikh struggle for religious accommodation all over the world.
Definitely. The first, and maybe the most defining, is quiche.
Uncut hair, worn under a turban.
Right. It's a sign of respect for God's creation, just accepting the body as it was designed. It's a very public, very non-negotiable commitment.
And the second K is the kanga.
The small wooden comb worn in the hair. That symbolizes cleanliness, tidiness, the discipline you need to maintain the kish, discipline of body and mind.
Okay, then we have the kara.
The steel bracelet worn on the right wrist. It's a circle, so it symbolizes the unending connection to God and also the strength needed for that commitment. It's like a moral restraint, a reminder.
The fourth is the kacha, the undergarment. More of a practical symbol.
It is a modest, practical undergarment traditionally suited for mobility and fighting, which connects back to the martial aspect of the Khalsa as a defensive, protective order.
And finally, the most discussed and often misunderstood one, the kirpan.
The short ceremonial sword. And the sources are so clear on its purpose. It symbolizes dignity, self-defense, and most importantly, the readiness to stand up and protect the weak.
So it is not a weapon of aggression.
Categorically not. It's a sacred duty to protect righteousness. And this requirement for visibility, for this commitment to justice, is what inevitably brought the community into conflict when it started to spread globally.
And that story really shifts at the turn of the 20th century. Sikhs began emigrating widely around 1900. By the 70s, many were settling in Canada and along the Pacific Rim.
Drawn by opportunities, but bringing this very strict, very visible religious identity with them.
And this movement immediately slams into these exclusionist policies. The sources point to the Komagata Meru incident in 1914 as just a foundational trauma of this era.
It was a tragedy rooted in discriminatory laws, specifically the Continuous Journey Law, which was designed to prevent almost all South Asian immigration.
So this ship, carrying 376 passengers, mostly Sikhs, was forced to just sit in Vancouver Harbor for months.
Denied the right to disembark. And the outcome was just horrific. When the ship was forced back to India, the passengers were met with violence, with death. It set this terrible precedent of exclusion.
Which makes the Canadian government's apology in 1993, so belated but so necessary, an acknowledgement of that injustice.
The community then faced another wave of trauma, particularly in the mid-'80s. The sources detail the painful aftermath of the Air India Flight 182 tragedy in 1985.
Right. The bombing that killed 329 people, mostly Canadians. It was linked to Sikh extremists who were supporting the Khalistan separatist movement.
And what the source material really highlights is the agonizing consequence of this. The entire Sikh community in Canada suddenly faced this intense suspicion and discrimination from the wider public.
They were just unfairly categorized, stereotyped, because of the actions of a violent few. It's a powerful example of how historical prejudice can just compound current trauma.
It absolutely is. And yet, the narrative of Sikh history in Canada is ultimately one of deep integration and a defense of rights. We see this in political successes, like Ujjal Dosanjh becoming the first Indo-Canadian premier of British Columbia in 2000.
But I think the most compelling example of the community's commitment to the 5Ks in a modern context has to be the fight over the RCMP turban issue.
Oh, that's a perfect case study. The rules for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police traditionally required officers to wear that iconic Stetson hat.
So for a Sikh to serve while maintaining the quiche under a turban, those rules had to change.
It wasn't just about a uniform, it was a legal and social battle for the recognition of their fundamental identity.
And they won.
They did. The successful challenge, which led to the approval of turbans for Sikh RCMP members between 1986 and 1990, was a defining moment for religious accommodation in Canada.
It really was.
It demonstrated how Sikhs consistently and successfully advocate for civil rights. They prove that their commitment to the Khalsa identity, to the Kirpan and the Kesh, doesn't conflict with civic duty.
So if we look back at this whole trajectory, it's clear that Sikhism is defined by this revolutionary ethical code. You have equality in the Langar, you have action through honest work, kirat karni, and service, seva.
And an unwavering commitment to a visible, shared spiritual identity, which is upheld by the 5Ks.
Yeah, the sources show us a community that doesn't retreat from the world to find God. It engages, actively and ethically.
It's an incredibly powerful history of resilience.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to go back to the source material for one last thought.
Yeah.
The Guru Granth Sahib contains this theme about the real hero. And it describes this hero as one who fights in defense of righteousness.
And when you think about the long history of the Sikh community, from the defensive founding of the Khalsa to fighting for the Kirpan in schools to the legal battles over the turban in the RCMP, it does raise a question for today.
Which is?
In our world, which is just saturated with opinion and conflicting narratives, how can we truly embody that Sikh concept of the real hero in our own lives? How do we make sure that when we defend our values, it's always rooted in the righteousness of selfless service and truth and not just, ego or aggression?
That connection between spiritual principle and ethical action.
That's it. And it's something worth exploring further.